So Russia tried and failed another large armored assault, and according to one Russian mill blogger, quote, spoiler, the result will be terrible. And he's right. I mean, we've got the footage to confirm that. Now, Russia is pretty clearly pressing the attack all across the front, but with limited gains and heavy losses in the last few weeks, they've increased their strikes on civilians. Now, in the last 3 days, Russia has struck a kindergarten in the middle of the day while all the kids were there, hunted farmers in the fields, and shelled a city center with unguided munitions, as in rockets landing everywhere and clearly not going after a specific target. Also, today, we kick off Operation Teddy Bear, picking up Christmas toys for Ukrainian children in hospitals, orphanages, and near the front line. More on that later in today's video. Now, starting with this most recent Russian armored assault, you're going to see 4 to 6 armored vehicles and a dozen plus motorcycles used in this assault. That might not sound like a lot, but what we have seen for months on end now, up until about 2 weeks ago, was very small scale, talking one armored vehicle at a time, generally just motorcycles, ATVs, and for the most part, soldiers on foot. So there's been a noticeable change with attacks taking place specifically in and around Pokrovsk here, and we are going to come back to that in today's video. We saw a couple days ago attacks down here near Orhiv, and today, actually, and this speaks to the fact that Russia is really pressing wherever they can, an attack over here near Seversk. When was the last time we really talked about any significant operations? And look, the front is not static there, right? There's constantly fighting going on in this direction, but the armored assault I'm going to show you here in a minute has not been standard for this area, but this right here is where this video is coming from. Now, this was put out by the 81st Air Assault Brigade of Ukraine, showing that they repelled a mechanized assault in the area of Serebryanka and Seversk, the footage coming from Deep State Map. They say the enemy's assault actions began around 10 a.m., where they unexpectedly deployed a significant amount of equipment for this sector, as well as motorcycles and infantry participating in the attack. The enemy divided its forces into several groups, including a monster tank, which required dozens of drones to finally stop. By the way, it managed to get the furthest of all of those involved in the assault actions. After destroying the equipment, the focus shifted to eliminating infantry scattered in the groves. And a note on these tanks. They look ridiculous, and I think we can all agree on that. All the different variations, they're all one-off, they're custom-built at the front. For as weird as they look, they are doing the trick. And you'll hear this from Ukrainian units over and over and over again. There is some effectiveness to that armor. It's not just Russia building it to look ridiculous. It is improving the survivability of the vehicle. Now, I want to be clear, they're not invincible. They are still falling to drones. In fact, in this case, they said it took dozens of drones to actually take one of these tanks out of commission. And I should also note that they're still very, very vulnerable to more conventional methods of destruction. So it's not clear that an actual ATGM, anti-tank guided missile, would be slowed down at all by some of this added armor. You know, in a lot of cases, you've got plastic and tarps and chain or netting. Like, that's not going to stop a javelin. Also, landmines. We've seen countless examples of these massive modified tanks driving over a landmine. You may as well not have added any of that armor at all. There's no additional protection underneath, so they're still very vulnerable in that sense. However, for all the laughs and the jokes of looking at these things, they are increasing the survivability of Russian armor. Now, the Russian assessment here, coming from mill blogger Vault 8, says, quote, I am following with interest the battle around the effectiveness of mechanized attacks under conditions of enemy superiority in drones and well-prepared engineering defense. Spoiler, the result will be terrible. Supporters of mechanized attacks will have to prove that the ratio, 1 successful attack to 5 complete defeats, is normal. There is no war without losses, and quote, but we advanced. But those who argue that without gaining air superiority, mechanized attacks are suicidal will have to stock up on the Valium and not die of cringe, because since October 2023, we have generally been attacking with similar results. An outsider observer will have a question. What is the current exchange rate of people and equipment in the grinding strategy? Is it in our favor? And that is kind of the clear question when looking at this. We've had multiple attacks this week, and there's only one that I know of that seems to have had some success. So the most recent here near Seversk, when we're looking at the large armored assaults, that is, countless have taken place here north of Pokrovsk near Shakov. Does not appear that any of those have been affected. I think we saw 3 in 3 days here. And then there was a wave of these attacks a little further south, all along this sector kind of surrounding Orhiv. Now, there's one area that it looks like they may have seen some success. near Malatamchaka. I'm going to pull up Suryak map that tends to be a little more updated in that area. Coming down here to Orhiv, you'll see deer in Malatamchaka, it looks like there may have actually been a Russian advance that held. And we do have footage from the Russians around that attack showing their forces moving into these areas. But then, again, you're moving back to what Vault 8 talks about. Was that acceptable for the 5 other attacks that failed and had all of the soldiers and equipment destroyed? That's a big part up for debate here. Now, turning back to the map here, there was some additional action near Pokrovsk just in the last 24 hours. This whole section to the north, the Russian breakthrough back in August, that we've seen Ukraine kind of clearing through in recent days. They just announced that they were able to liberate this area right here, Kucherov Yar, and we've got some footage to confirm that. They say Ukrainian airborne troops liberated Kucherov Yar in the Donetsk region. Units of the air assault forces, in particular the 132nd Separate Reconnaissance Battalion, liberated the settlement of Kucherov Yar in the Dobropilia direction. During the operation, more than 50 enemy personnel were taken prisoner. Ukrainian soldiers raised the Ukrainian flag in the liberated village, a symbol of the return of life, freedom, and spirit. Step by step, Ukraine is reclaiming what is hers. Now, we should note that these pockets, again shown on Deep State map, do not appear on other maps. So going back over to Suryak, and this prompted a lot of folks to say there are no pockets there, or even there are no Russian forces there at all. This one now has been moved back to show Ukrainian control of Kucherov Yar. But this is the area where for a while now, right when the attack kicked off, it looked like Russian forces may have been isolated in that pocket. We had Russian mill bloggers talking about the challenge of getting resupplies up there, and then all of a sudden it just fell off the map. And I think part of that is Russia, even today. I mean, we've got that video showing Russian POWs being marched out of Kucherov Yar. They're there. There were Russians there until this clearance operation. That's not been in Russian media at all. They just kind of wrote that entire sector off, like no mention. Occasionally they would talk about the fighting in Kucherov Yar. Increased attacks. We're seeing the possibility of our forces advancing, but nothing about the number of troops there that, by all accounts at this point, they were cut off and they were clearly captured on video. Now, as a part of this operation, there was another piece caught on film here, the rescuing of civilians. They say during the liberation and the clearing of the settlement of Kucherov Yar, Ukrainian paratroopers managed to find and evacuate local civilians to a safe place. They say the difficulty of the operation was due to the fact that the Russian occupiers often dress as civilians, which significantly complicates orientation. Despite everything, thanks to the coordinated action of the headquarters and the implementation by the paratroopers, the operation was successful, allowing for the rescue of people who found themselves in trouble. They say a total of 10 Ukrainian civilians were rescued. Again, pretty impressive footage showing them load up and hauled out of that area back to a safe space. Now, one additional clip that I wanted to show today, it actually took place near Kupiansk, where we're not getting a ton of footage now. There's definitely a slow, kind of steady grind by Russian forces in this direction as of late. And as we reported recently, Russian forces have entered the actual city of Kupiansk. But we just got this footage here from some Russian channels saying that Ukraine tried kind of a small-scale counteroffensive, or counterattack, I should say, in this area that included 2 U.S.-provided Mike 113 APCs, armored personnel carriers. Russia says they destroyed both of these and were able to eliminate the Ukrainian infantry after they dismounted. The reason I wanted to show this is, first off, we're not hearing much about any sort of armored counterattack by Ukraine just about anywhere. It's not like a big tactic right now. But also look at the Mike 113s. So the APCs have that kind of modified porcupine spikes all over them to protect them from drones. So we've got a lot of pictures of the Russian vehicles looking like that. Not nearly as many of the Ukrainian vehicles, but here we go. At least one example. All right, so the next segment is going to be a little dark. It's talking about the targeting of civilians shelling a kindergarten while children are in there. So before we get into that, a little positive move here. We're kicking off right now Operation Teddy Bear. So with your help, we're picking up 5,000 Christmas gifts for Ukrainian children in hospitals, orphanages, and frontline communities. Now, I know normally we focus on military supplies and trying to help them get equipment to fight and win this war, but with Christmas coming up and being a father myself, I wanted to make sure we thought about the countless kids that are stuck in the middle of this war. So in turn, I've teamed up with Veteran Aid Ukraine, a Norwegian volunteer organization, as a part of their Operation Teddy Bear. Now, this is something that they've done every single year since the start of the full-scale invasion, and they've got pictures showing them delivering these toys. It's pretty powerful stuff. So I Look, it's not FPV drones or thermal optics, but even the smallest donation here can really help to make a kid's Christmas. So if you're interested and able, the link to contribute is in the description below. And thank you all so much for your continued generosity and kindness. Now, turning to some of these most recent Russian attacks, and I want to be clear, Russia has not stopped going after civilian targets since the war began, but these are pretty notable ones, really newsworthy ones, just in the course of the last couple days. So 2 days ago, we had a Russian strike against a kindergarten while the kindergarten was in session. Daylight, I had some folks reach out whose children or children of their friends were at that school, and they said the only reason a lot of children weren't killed is because when the air raid sirens went off, the teachers and the children went down underground. It's hard to imagine expecting that your kindergarten is going to be on the receiving end of a Russian drone strike, but that's what happened, and we have the footage confirming that. They say 2 days ago, a Russian drone strike on a kindergarten in Kharkiv following a night of massive attacks. Unfortunately, 1 fatality is reported. This is from Ukrainian President Zelensky. As of now, 7 people have been injured. They're receiving medical assistance. All children have been evacuated and are in shelters. There is no and cannot be any justification for a drone strike on a kindergarten. It is clear that Russia is becoming more brazen. These strikes are a slap in the face to everyone insisting on a peaceful solution. And there were a couple different clips that I want to play here, and it can be hard to watch, but the first one we were looking at shows kind of first responders showing up and documenting the scene. But the second one is the first-person view, the helmet cam footage of some of those first responders going into the kindergarten to pull the kids out. You can see just how terrified they are. I mean, the building was just hit and destroyed by a Russian munition. Now, this, of course, would have been pretty awful on its own, but it's been a notable pattern in the last couple days. Another example here, this was drone footage released by Azov, where they say fighters of the 12th Azov Brigade recorded another crime of the occupiers against the civilian population in Donetsk. And this is important. Intercepted footage from an enemy FPV drones shows Russian operators organizing a safari targeting civilian farmers, agricultural machinery under fire. And I'm going to play that here real quick in full because there's a couple key notes. I understand the first question here would be, why would Russia release this? They didn't. This was intercepted footage by Azov. It is very common to intercept enemy drone footage at the front. In talking with drone operators from Ukraine, it is a constant issue that they have. They know their feeds are hacked, and they know that they can all day pick up a variety of Russian feeds to see what they're going after, what's visible, what's not visible, and so on. So that's what happened here. And you can see they're just kind of toying with the farmers. Good luck explaining any sort of military equipment here, right? I mean, their combines are in their fields. And of course, we don't have another drone showing the actual impact here, but you'll see this one at the end of this video flying directly into one of the vehicles. So at the very least, tormenting the farmers, and then at the end, destroying some of their farm equipment, something we've seen a lot of in the Kherson region in southern Ukraine. This specific video happening in Donetsk. We also got overnight. So again, 3 days in a row here. We had the 2 days ago, Wednesday, we had the kindergarten hit. Yesterday, the footage came out showing Russians hunting these farmers in their fields. And then overnight, we had an MLRS shelling, multiple launch rocket system shelling of Kherson. I'm going to play that video right here to give you an idea of what that looks like. They just hit everything across the river. Now, multiple launch rocket systems, there are some that have guided munitions. In this case, they are not, and you can tell because look at the spread of where those are impacting. Even if you were to look at this video and say that one building right there is definitely a military target, look how far off some of these other munitions are landing. Did you see what, 3, 4, 5 land in the water? So when you are saturating an area like this with fire, it's called an area target rather than a point target. So a point target would be, let's say that building in the lower right is a known Ukrainian military storage facility. That would be a point target. You go after that one target. You use a precision munition or you use unguided and you have to, walk it in with artillery. This is an area target. That means that they are just trying to hit that entire general area, suppressing maybe. In this case, I would argue a better term might be terrorizing because, again, it's during daylight hours. Population lives there. This is across the river. There are Ukrainian civilians living in Kherson, making a life there, trying to make a life there day in and day out. This was not all that unusual towards the start of the war, especially after Ukrainian forces pushed Russia back across the river. We haven't seen this this brazen of just daylight MLRS shelling of downtown, of the city of Kherson in quite a while. So it's hard to not notice this pattern just in the last couple days, and it does coincide, of course, with the United States kind of standing up and actually layering sanctions on Russia for the first time during the Trump administration. You wonder if that is translating to a little bit of desperation at the front. But that's all we got for now. Of course, if interested and able, be sure to check out Operation Teddy Bear. It'll be linked in the description below. But thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.